So recording is up and going, and it'll just be a minute or so. I'm looking for something to talk about.
Okay.
All right. First thing, does not appear as though you've adjusted your grapple sensitivity. As that is not
It's
so.
at
Yeah,
100.
it's at 100. All right. I may recommend. Are you familiar with what that does?
It hooks you to the closest thing possible.
Yeah, when it's at 100 basically. So if you
Mm-hmm.
when you lower like if you lower that to 10, it would basically only grapple onto anything if your crosshair is directly on top of it, which isn't necessarily what you want. You don't really want that because then that makes grapple a skill shot, and you don't want grapple to be a skill shot. But
Mm.
you do want it to be a bit more accurate so that if we're trying to like hook and maybe do like a grapple shot here, it's gonna actually go where you want it to go and not go to like it was really far off of where you're aiming. So I might recommend lowering that a decent bit. And that's actually a thing that you can do with a lot of different characters because I'm not sure how many different characters you play, but especially like over in the support. Over on the support end, you have Auto Nano Boosts, you have Mercy Beam and Flight, Kiriko Teleport and Healing, Zenyatta Orbs, Zarya Bubbles, Sombra Hack. It applies to a lot of different things, so I just like look through them and uh, generally when it comes to sensitivities, I'd recommend between like 50 to 80 or so, so that you have a bit more accuracy, but it's also not like a skill shot.
Okay.
Uh-oh,
Mm.
that's no bueno. Yeah, that sucks. Okay, so right now we're obviously not necessarily expecting a Widowmaker right off the bat, and then we see her right at the last second that we're dead. So honestly, not too much to say that they got the jump on us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so basically, so some decent shots there, good kills.
Okay.
But now that we know that Widowmaker exists, first one you kind of get a pass, right? Because first one we are kind of popping in, and we don't necessarily expect to get domed from across the map right off the bat. Um, but now that we know that they have Widowmaker, we need to be cognizant of her, and we want to just make sure that we're constantly paying attention to where Widowmaker's at, trying to watch out for Widowmaker. Widowmaker is essentially our biggest threat on their team, right? We're not gonna have to really worry about the Reinhardt. They actually have a decent amount of threats for us, but I'd still say Widowmaker's the probably especially at those longer ranges is gonna be the one that can pick us off the easiest. Mercy, we only got to worry about if she's Valking. Hanzo, is a decent threat. Kiriko, we only got to worry about it really if she's looking. I mean, yeah, Kiriko's a decent threat as well, but Widowmaker can one tap us from anywhere at any time, right? That's the big idea. So we want to make sure we're just cognizant of her. She is also going to be the character on their team who we can pick off the easiest. And therefore, because she's moving super slowly, has a massive head hitbox, so we're each other's biggest threats essentially, and therefore we probably want to be looking for her one of the first things in a fight. If you have an easy pick like Mercy, then kill the Mercy. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're actively watching and cognizant of where Widowmaker's at. Here we're peeking Widowmaker like she has no clue where we're at. Expect her to know that you're here because you're going and shooting, and if you're shooting, then she sees all the trails and she hears the shots. So we're kind of approaching this duel with Widowmaker. Um, like Widowmaker doesn't know where we are, and then she does,
Mm.
right? So that kind of gets us killed. So awareness of where Widowmaker's at, maybe possibly like rotating so that we're not just sitting in the same spot as we were before, and then we want to just make sure we're kind of putting a bit more of a priority on the Widowmaker.
Where should I have gone then after
Okay,
I got that mercy
so
kill?
after getting the mercy kill, if you're trying to focus up the Widowmaker, possibly doing something like this where we can go this way, and then now we can either choose to, because if Widowmaker sees us, right, and Widowmaker knew that we were up here, we can go this way,
Mm-hmm.
and either we can pause for a couple seconds and then repeat this angle, grapple. Nope, that's wrong. Widowmaker. We don't have grapple yet, but we could have rotated left side if we had more time. But I think Widowmaker would have seen us if we tried to do that.
Okay.
Okay. So first thing I'm noting is that you do seem to have a very high sensitivity, if I'm not mistaken, which I would assume is
Uh,
because you're typically a Genji player. Do you know what your
let me
sensitivity and DPI are?
let me actually check. My sensitivity right now 3.25,
Okay. So that's pretty low. What's your DPI at?
800.
800. Oh, so that is actually a really low sensitivity. On the contrary, so that is quite the opposite. Which would just mean that you're having to move your arm around a lot more. um, let's see. So notice because that looks like really like you could see here when we're aiming, like we're up here, and then like it like just really suddenly, like it feels like almost like a jarring, like I don't even know if that maybe was that like mouse skipping. Do you have any clue? Does your mouse do that?
Uh, I hope not.
Hope
It's a
not.
super. It's a Logitech super light, so I hope not.
Gotcha. Okay, but you get what I'm saying there, because that's
Yeah,
something that can happen
it's a very
sometimes. Yeah.
jittery thing.
Very jittery thing. Gotcha.
Like
um
the movement I do is very
mhm.
jittery.
Gotcha. So, that can be something, I guess, just to like watch out for, because that can possibly like throw off aim if you're, doing like just this sudden like, flick from all the way on the top right to like all the way on the bottom left, and then that's now throwing off your shots. So I would just be cognizant of that and watching for it. We can maybe go a bit more into aim as it comes up, but so far it's been decent. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll maybe go more in on it in a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So I think we're gonna well, I was just talking about it, but I think maybe we're gonna talk about it again in a second here. Uh-oh, little. Oh yeah, there we go. Nice shots. Good job paying attention to where she was. Okay. So we're gonna leave, we're gonna go over two things here on the topic of aim. So firstly, is basically the concept that you want to make sure you're not flicking with every single shot that you're taking. And flicking is not bad. Flicking really shouldn't be a pure aim style. Neither should pure tracking be a pure aim style, because both tracking and flicking and cross replacement and etc., like all these different styles of aiming, all of them are useful in their own ways and at their own times. And if you're only going for one, then you're going to have deficits. So let's talk about when is flicking good, right? When is flicking beneficial? Flicking, by definition, is anytime you are starting at point A and you're going to point A really, really quickly, right? Um, in those time frames, right, you're going to want to flick in different scenarios, such as if there's a fast-moving target running around, right? So, like, let's say Tracer's blinking behind us. Well, if I tried to track that, I'd be going, ooh, right? And then that wouldn't really
Mhm.
work out too well for me. If Tracer's blinking around, you're going to have to do much faster movements to keep up with the Tracer. Then let's say someone's, like, sneaking up behind us. Once again, you're going to have to flick around to acquire the target. Let's say that we're aiming down below here, and then we get the kill. Now we're acquiring a new target. Someone pops up to the top. I have to flick up to the person, right? Now, that's times where flicking is necessary. Essentially, anytime your crosshair does need to travel somewhere very fast, that's when we're flicking. And there is also a difference between flicking and then micro flicking. Micro flicking is going to be a much smaller distance. That would be like the difference between that and then that, right? There's a big difference between the two. Micro flicking usually is going to be pretty okay to do like in any moment. It just kind of depends because it's a much smaller movement. It's not really going to throw you off the target a lot of times. It can be kind of an easy way to get up to the head. Let's say if they jumped, and you can kind of reacquire up to the head. But when you do not want to be flicking, is when we're already aiming directly on top of somebody, right? If you're already aiming at someone's head and you're trying to shoot, and then we're doing this flick, well, then we're just going like that, and we're going off our targets.
Okay.
So, therefore, just try to keep your aim a bit more smooth. This is where we now go into kind of like this cross replacement or tracking aim style, where we're just trying to, you know, if our cross is on their head, we just go click, right? We just get them like that. If they do a sharp movement, like let's say they jumped, we can do like, you know, flick up to the head. Let's say we're aiming at their body, we can flick up to the head with a micro flick, but we don't want to be doing these large movements, and that's actually what it seems like we're doing a lot of the time. Is we'll be directly on top of somebody, we'll be doing that, and we'll just miss the target, even though we were basically aiming at them half a second ago. So I just be really careful that you're flicking when flicking is needed and not doing it when it's not needed. That makes sense.
So just flick less.
Flick right now it's seeming like flicking is like an all the time thing, right? And
Okay.
that's more so you just want to flick when it's needed, which yes would be less than it is currently. And then you replace, and then one of those things that you'll replace it with is it is tracking, is staying on top of the person consistently. Then the other thing would be cross replacement. Is that a term you're familiar with? You've been playing the game for a while.
Yeah, putting it where they're gonna show up on screen with
Yeah.
their head ready to go.
Exactly. Yep. So you pretty much nailed it. You know, I'll like redefine in my own words is that cross replacement's just placing your crosshair in the easiest spot possible to make your, or in the best place possible to make your shots as easy as possible. It's using your brain to help your aim. And the first major step to that is making sure you're aiming head level. I would just remind you to do that. It's like, you know, I think we did it in a couple instances there, but then there will also be other instances where we weren't aiming head level. So this is just going, if you're aiming head levels, just, you know, headshots are obviously much better than body shots. Basically, on most characters, you're doing like 2 times damage if you're hitting headshots, and Widowmaker means the difference between a 1-shot and a 2-shot. If you're aiming down here, there's much more adjustment that's needed to hit those headshots, which means it's a harder shot to hit, right? The more adjustment we have to go, the harder, the more difficult the shot is, rather than if we just go left and right. If we're aiming head level already, then our shots naturally become headshots. Let's say we're just shooting in the people down corridors and, you know, that just doing our thing. We're just naturally going to be hitting body shots. But if we're aiming up here, then it's just naturally going to be headshots, doing all the same stuff. And then you also nailed that second point of just pre-aiming, aiming where, you know, people are going to be. Bots right side, aim ahead level right side, right? Easy shot to land. Bots left, we're going to be pre-aiming left. Easy shots. Make sure you're also adjusting for, you know, these guys are on a slope. Same way we look down on a Torb and up on a tank. We're going to look down on these guys so that we turn the corner. Very easy shots to land. So, yeah, that's something else that we can kind of substitute in for just the crazy flicking is instead of, you know, flicking, we can just kind of let people walk into our crosshair sometimes.
Okay.
Yep. So, all making sense so far?
Yeah.
Welcome to Blizzard. Ready for battle.
Alright, so we were well after this. Right, so like notice for example, like we can like look at a shot like this, where Mercy on top of us is a little bit different. But then like Hanzo, right, where we're like aiming like right on top of Hanzo, and we're like an inch off of him. Maybe we can be doing like some sort of grapple shot, and then we're doing like really sharp flicks. Okay, let's see. I mean, maybe we can find it in other places. Maybe I could have rewound, but we'll find it.
Where could my dance partner be?
That's a good voice line.
Oh, I missed that.
Okay. Yeah. So what would you say would be the issue as of here?
I was getting too close to the Rhine.
Yeah, or at least
I should have backed out sooner.
yeah, just letting the Reiner get too close to us, right? So exactly, just grappling quicker. Here's just gonna help keep us alive.
Back in action.
Okay. Okay.
No one can hide from my sight.
Uh-oh. So let's talk real quick about survivability because that seems to be something that's popping up here. Making sure you're
Hmm.
staying alive. Now, staying alive, everybody knows that dying is bad. That's not something anybody has any question over. But sometimes people don't really know how bad it really is. So let's break it down a little bit. So far we've died, I believe, 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yeah.
so we died 4 times, and every time you die, right? So let's say we keep up that death rate, right? Like we have a similar death rate. Let's be a little lenient with it. So it's 4 times in under 4 minutes because we had the spawn time too. So let's say this whole game lasts like 20, like let's just say 24 minutes. That would be 24 deaths. Let's once again be generous with it. Let's take that down. It's 20 deaths. Right? That's a lot of deaths if we kept up that current death rate, right? And that's being mildly generous with it. Also hoping that you go for longer stretches without dying. So let's say that you had 20 deaths, which would be an egregious number of deaths to have in a game. So I don't know. What we can tilt it down lower. Let's do 18, right? So we have 18 deaths. Each death is 10 seconds of respawn time, but then also it's 10 seconds of walk back time, right? Which is about 20 seconds per death. 18 times 20 would be 360 divided by 60. So that would be, roughly speaking, about 6 minutes of time that you would be just absent from the game, where you don't exist. That is a lot of time. That's enough time to be getting a lot of kills, be getting a lot of ultimates, right? If you're playing, especially on a character that, your ultimate's more impactful, that could be get the time it takes to get like 3 ultimates. Then besides that, that's gonna be just like a lot of time that you're doing nothing. And you also have to remember that it's not just time that you have no impact. It's time that you're having negative impact, right? Because when you're dying, that's putting your team at a disadvantage. When you put your team at a disadvantage, it means that they're more likely to lose the fight, which essentially means that dying is our impact on losing the fight, which ain't too great. We want to have a positive impact, not a negative impact on fights. Um,
Hmm.
so, overall, cutting down on deaths, good, very, very good idea. Now, when it comes to deaths, you want to analyze your deaths. You want to think through, why did I die? Don't just go, oh snap, I died. Go next. Because if you're doing that, then you're never really gonna stop dying. Right? This is part of the improvement process, is being able to identify mistakes. So deaths are a really easy one because they're an easy mistake to identify. Everyone knows that deaths are mistakes. So what you want to do is you want to look at the death, think through what is the mistake. Well, the death is the mistake. Then think through what is the underlying issue within the mistake. What caused you to die? In this situation, or I guess why don't we say generally speaking? Generally speaking, what are some common reasons why people die?
Mm. Out of position.
Yep, poor positioning, correct.
Uh, Flankers
Um,
decline.
Yeah, so that would be, I would maybe equate that to like a lack of awareness, right? Not knowing that the flanker's there to do anything about it. Or maybe you could just say like that you did know they were there and then you didn't duel them correctly, or you weren't in the right position, so you were like with your team or something like that, or you didn't grapple away, that sort of idea.
Okay.
Yep. Other ones to add in there would be like misuse of abilities. So let's say like once again, like let's say there's a Genji on us and we don't use grapple, might be a missed opportunity right there. Um, or we don't have Venomine down on top of ourselves, right? That'd be another misuse. Um, Over aggression. That'd be like if we're just running into their team, right? Or we're just way too far, like close to their team. That'd be kind of like when Reinhardt ran on top of us over there. We were just a little too far forwards and we didn't back up soon enough.
Okay.
Then yeah, I also mentioned lack of awareness. So what would you, and so you want to think through those sorts of things, and then after you die, you have all that time in the world to think through why you died. You can do it kind of while you're playing too. Um, let's rewatch this
No
one and let's
one
see if
can
we can
hide from
have
my
you see why you
sight.
died.
Kiriko called me out and then Ryan went after me.
Yeah, or Reinhardt also just heard you shoot. Right, either or. And so, yes, so you said, okay, well, Reinhardt killed you, which is not incorrect, but why was Reinhardt able to kill you?
Because I wasn't with my team.
Yeah, which is fair enough, right? If you're with your team, the Reinhardt probably wouldn't be able to. Does that mean that you're never able to go on a flank ever because you might die because you're away from your team?
I was that was a little too close to where the Reinhardt originally was.
Well, I think that's fine if like, cause look at the distance from where Reinhardt's at. That it's a good, good 15, 20 meters that he has to run over to you. So, I'll maybe make this a bit easier since you've had a couple guesses now. The main
Okay.
issue is that we don't do anything to react to Reinhardt until he is right here, right?
Okay.
Which means that we didn't know that he was here until he's right here, right? So this therefore would come in my opinion, unless you knew that he was there and then for some reason decided to continue to stand still. I would presume that this would be a lack of awareness, right? That we just weren't,
Yeah.
you didn't know that Reinhardt was there
I didn't
until
really
you're,
expect it.
yeah, exactly. You didn't know it until you were like 35 HP, right? If we knew that he was there and we saw him running up to you, then you just grapple away and you're good, right?
Okay.
Or you just start running and then you're fine, right? So this would be a lack of awareness primarily, I would say. But do note that sometimes deaths can be multiple things, right? It can be a couple things, and then but I'd say this is the primary one here. Now, this would probably be firstly there'd be a bit of visual awareness because I do think that we saw him
No
visually
one can hide
running towards
from my
us, if I'm not
sight.
mistaken. Firstly, we see him there. Also, right there, you could see him running into that room. Um, he like turned around and started running into the room. Then you could see his little hammer there. But the biggest thing you have, that one, that's fine, right? Like you could barely see him, but the biggest factor would be audio awareness, right? Is listening for him because you could hear his big clunky footsteps if you're listening for it. Um, Sound settings, let's talk about those real quick. Master volume, I'd recommend turning that loud enough. That's very subjective because everyone has different system volumes. Music volume, I'd recommend turning off or down because that can clutter with your audio. Make sure that you just, for your headset, that you have surround sound enabled, and if that is not an option, then you can go to spatial audio in game and turn on Dolby Atmos for headphones. That's the in-game option. And
Okay.
then also I'd recommend turning on place sound when enemy and teammate are eliminated because that's basically like an auditory version of kill feed. Right.
Okay.
So you could have all of those settings be perfect and still have terrible audio awareness if you're not actively listening for footsteps and gunshots and abilities and ultimates. You have to actually pay attention to them. So I think that's a good segue into application, because oftentimes it can maybe seem on the surface a bit confusing of, okay, yes, I got it. I need to listen and see better, but how do I listen and see better, right? That seems a little non-intuitive, right? How do I do that? Um, so when it comes to application, you're going to put this stuff into practice by making sure, really the same way you work on anything, and that is that while you're playing, you're going to make sure you're actively focusing on it. That means that you're not going to autopilot. You're not going to just play to play, and contrary to popular belief, you're not going to purely play to win, because then you just stagnate, you don't really go anywhere. But when you play to improve, then you actually go places. You actually win more. Then what that will actually look like within your gameplay is we're going to pick something out. So let's say we're focusing on awareness here. So you're going to pick out awareness, and you're going to think to yourself, awareness, 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 audio awareness, listen, 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 look, 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 look. And when you do that, when you're giving yourself that constant stream of reminders to pay attention to your surroundings, well, what is awareness? Awareness is paying attention to your surroundings. So if you're reminding yourself to pay attention to surroundings, then you'll probably pay attention to your surroundings a bit more than if you weren't giving yourself reminders at all, than if you weren't thinking about it. Then that will make your awareness better. When you do that for a long enough period of time, then that will form it as a positive habit. Once it forms as a habit, then you don't really need to worry about it as much. It just kind of comes naturally. And then you can move on to something else to work on. Final thing, don't try to do everything all at once, because that will get a bit overwhelming. Instead, pick out one category of things, or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category to work on, and go from there. All that makes sense? Any questions on it?
Uh, what should I do to get more get like I get that I should like look around more and be looking for audio cues, but how would I like actually train for that one?
Yeah, so um pretty much what I was exactly what I was just saying, and I'll maybe restate it again, so that it's maybe easier to understand. Audio, like, awareness is a lot of different things, right? You can be aware of the kill feed, you can be aware of tab, you can be aware of your HUD, you can be aware of where the enemies are, where your teammates are. You could be having audio awareness and listening for all of the different things that are going on in audio, and listening for people to die, listening for the awareness is a big, broad category of the game, right? But if you really dumb it down, awareness is you listening and you looking, right? And here, right in this scenario, right here, right now, this instant, we were not listening. That's what happened, right?
Okay.
You weren't listening, and that caused you to die. So it's, let's say you were trying to work on listening better, right? Because that's what that's how your awareness, your audio awareness gets better, is by listening better. So if you're focusing on listening better, then you're going to come into your game. You're gonna, maybe that's what I say at the end. It might not be, but at the end of the session, I'll give you a review. I'll give you go on, and then we'll go over the main points, right? And I'll tell you,
Okay.
this is what I think you should work on. So let's say that was awareness and audio awareness. Then what you do is you're gonna come away from the session. You're gonna go play some comp games or whatever you want to play. And
Okay.
what you're gonna do is you're gonna tell yourself at the very beginning of the game, all right, this game, I'm not just gonna kind of walk through the game and just play to win. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to remind myself to focus on my audio awareness, or I'm gonna remind myself to focus on my visual awareness, right? So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna come into the game, and you're gonna start going through your stuff. You're gonna do your normal business, right? You're going to go and shoot people, but all the time in the back of your head, you're thinking to yourself, listen, 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 right? And when you do that, you're probably going to listen a bit more, right?
Okay.
If you're thinking about it. And that's not going to be 100% of your brain power, because if you're putting 100% of your brain power into listening, then how are you going to aim? How are you going to move? How are you going to do anything, right? So think of it more as a prioritization. So you put, like, if you're divvying up your brain power, you're putting 10% into your abilities, 10% into your ult, 10% into your, maybe like 15% into your aim, right? Then 10% into your positioning. And then if you're focusing on awareness, you're going to put 50% into awareness, right? You're
Okay.
just going to make that the thing you're focusing more upon. And when you do that, that'll make it better. When you do that for longer stretches of time, that'll make it a habit, and it'll just come consistently, right? Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it does. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep. So just here. right? That's kind of what leads to the death. Gotta just pay attention a bit more.
Okay.
They outnumber us. Watch out.
All right, so like notice for example here, we're looking at the soldier. Soldier is directly on top of us, right? I guess we can't really see it. But we do like a mouse shake like every time we go for a shot. The other thing that I can do as well, besides just making like throwing off shots, is just like make it hard to see like what the heck's going on, right? Maybe that can mess with awareness too. If you're constantly jittering, you can miss out on like health bars and things like that. Okay, Kiriko ends up getting us. That's unfortunate. Once again, awareness is the only thing that stops that death, right? We're not gonna, we weren't necessarily in the worst positioning. Our abilities wouldn't have changed anything there. We weren't really overextended into their team. The only thing that would solve that death is knowing that Kiriko's there, and knowing that Kiriko's there, though, would be difficult. I'm not saying that this was an easily prevented death. It would still prevent her death to know that she's there, and then that comes in awareness again.
Okay.
Ooh, got her through like the crack there.
Didn't kill her though. Sucks.
Very nice shot.
Right into my web.
Very nice shots, plural.
Payload is advancing.
Okay, so there we kind of dropped a tad bit early. I think we were trying to get the Widowmaker, and then she immediately grappled away, which is great. That stinks. Very nice. Whew. Very nice shots. Starting to pop off now. Maybe don't want to be spending too much time on the Reinhardt because that happens, right? So
Yeah.
maybe a bit off on the target prioritization there. So I would definitely just be watching out for the squishies. Make sure once again, let's look at the why do we die, right? Because that's now keeping up with the death rate. I think this is like,
Awareness.
yeah. Oh, exactly, right? You got it. We didn't know Widowmaker's there, right? If we know Widowmaker's there, right, then we use cover. If we know Widowmaker's there, we could have been aiming and trying to duel her and just shoot her first. So knowing Widowmaker's there, right? How do we know Widowmaker's there? Well, we can watch spawn times, right? We know that there's spawns there. We know that we just killed Widowmaker 10 seconds ago. So we gotta make sure we're paying attention to when is Widowmaker respawning, because once again, like I said, Widowmaker, especially now that they're off Hanzo, Widowmaker is by far the biggest threat that we have on their team, right? Which means that we need to be constantly paying attention to where their Widowmaker's at, because in Widowmaker 1v1s, the player who locates the other Widowmaker first has probably like a 75% chance of winning the duel because they get the first shot or two in, right?
Okay.
So here, Widowmaker acquires you as a target first. She domes you in the head, you're dead, right? That's just how that duel works. So therefore, that's gonna mean that you firstly want to be paying attention to where they're at. Secondly, taking when you're up against Widowmakers and other snipers, oftentimes you can look to have positioning that's a bit more erratic. Look to take more off angles and going left and right, and maybe a mildly flanky. I wouldn't go too far in flanks though. But you're basically trying to take different angles that Widowmaker's not expecting. So if you were coming out of spawn as the enemy Widowmaker, where would be the spot that you expect the enemy Widowmaker to be?
Uh, Probably the top right or on the little sign on the left side. I Yeah. Okay.
harder. But the idea is be a bit unexpected, take those off angles, and then also expect where the Widowmaker is going to be, right? Make sure we're paying attention to where the Widowmaker is going to be. And then all those things are going to help keep us alive, once again, longer. Because right now that's 7 deaths in like 5 minutes a game. Nice shots. Okay. So, currently could be using sights. I've noticed that we're maybe holding on to sights a bit long. Is Widowmaker going to snipe us from there? Oh, that would have been a nice shot or like nice angle from Widowmaker. So I've noticed that we're being a bit slow to use sights. I think maybe we thought that we just had that win in the bag. I don't know why our Widowmaker backed off so far. I feel like they kind of could have had that because it's still like a 5v4 at the time. But Yep. I like the instinct to look down. The thing I mentioned is turn around to look down, because that makes it even more difficult for the Widowmaker to see you, because it basically puts your head below your shoulders and basically doesn't really give them too much to hit. So if you're trying to dodge a Widowmaker like that, turn around and look down. The other thing, once again, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Make sure you're using cover. There we are just a little bit delayed to notice the Widowmaker. Watch your spam jumping. Typically, you don't want to just go jump, 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 jump. As the Widowmaker, you've maybe seen this already, but jumping basically just makes you easier to headshot. Because when you go up, you gotta come down, and it's an easily trackable animation, and you don't really have too much control over your movement midair. So I wouldn't spam jump. We also have not really been using cover too much this game, so why don't we talk about cover real quick? Now, to be fair, we've pretty much been domed right off the bat for like the majority of our deaths. But at the same time, cover can also help with this, so awareness, and then also once you're aware, well, what's the alternative? Like, let's say we're in a situation like that, and we go, yay, we see Widowmaker. Now, what do you do once you see Widowmaker? Because if we're like, oh, yeah, I did it, I saw her, and then you just stand there out in the open, then you're probably going to die either way, right? So, if I'm standing right there, and the enemy team's standing over there, maybe it's the enemy Widowmaker, and she has to jump on me. And it takes me 1, 2, 3 seconds to go and get behind cover. And now, yes, I have cover. You cannot shoot through solid objects. We're all good and safe. But in that time it took us to walk here, we died. Right? Whereas if I'm standing right here, then I can go bang and then instantly be around the corner in half a second, which is 6 times faster than the 3 seconds it took. Right? So therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, where we go like this, and bad positioning is the absence of cover. And sometimes we'll stray too far from cover, which will mean that, the further away you stray from it, the worse off positioning you're in. And then also some other times you want to make sure that you're actually using it, because sometimes we'll be right next to it and then just never duck behind it. Or like, if you're never doing this, then even though we're standing next to it, the cover's not going to do anything if you're never doing this, right? So make sure that if we're out in the open, or if we're like right here, and this is kind of what the scenario looked like, and Widowmaker just grappled up to the high ground, you gotta do that. You don't want to just keep walking forwards and doing this and then looking down, right? We want to make sure we're just getting around that corner, and then that way Widowmaker can't shoot you. And cover's all over the place. You have slopes like so. You have random pillars around the map, right? You can use while you're reloading, when you're in between shots, when you are taking damage. Corners, same thing. Abilities and ultimates you can dodge. Random objects like the payload, pillar, corner, doorway, corner, doorway. High grounds all act as natural cover as well. They can see you. Now they can't. You crouch. Same thing. Now they can't. Right? So look to you make sure you're utilizing cover in your gameplay. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
I just stand near it, not use it.
Yeah, exactly. Want to make sure you're just ducking behind it whenever you see that you're in danger, being shot at. like I said, abilities, ultimates, that sort of thing. Um,
Okay.
Now, when it comes to dueling Widowmaker, as I said previously, you have um, basically, let's say that enemy Widowmaker is like over here. Let's just say that's Widow, right? And this is like the main angle. This is where your team's coming down. If Widowmaker's looking here,
Any last word?
then this is where they expect you to be from. And I wouldn't, and this would be fine. Whenever they don't have any, when they have little to contest you, you want to take the widest angles possible, right? You want to be able to see as much as you can. So like this, where I can see everything, right? Because that's going to give you the ability to get the most shots. Now, if we're up against someone who can contest you, like Widowmaker, well, then if I'm right here, then this is where Widowmaker is expecting me to be. This is going to be a very easy place for Widowmaker to shoot me, and it doesn't give me the jump on her. So if Widowmaker's down there, I'm not going to just peek from down this angle. I'm going to take what you call an off angle. It's a different angle from main. So I could peek up through here. I just want to be careful because maybe Widowmaker stall me come up through there. I have many, many options here. I could peek up through there. I could pretend to flank and then wait like, 4 seconds and then re-peek the Widowmaker because oftentimes she's not going to sit there staring at the corner for 5 seconds. She's going to sit there for 4 seconds and then look away to something else or look to a different angle. And then you catch him off guard. Okay, now from here we can move right side and we can catch Widowmaker off like this, right? That would be pretty good. We could utilize grapple, and we have 3 different options here. We can grapple up top right and come from a top right play. We could, come over and do this, which it would maybe be the play if they're expecting you to come up through that, right? That wouldn't be too far off, so I'd be careful. You could grapple and take this all the way top or angle, right? Which would allow you to have a little bit better of an angle like that, though, I mean, of course not perfect. And then you could also grapple to this high ground, which would also be good. Right, so just think about the different options. Don't always be predictable. Change up how you're playing based off of what characters they're running. Team comp dictates play style.
Okay.
Ultimates. Don't hold on to your ultimates. I've noticed like 2 fights that we kind of went without using our ultimate. Especially like Widowmaker, where it's not really like it's pretty flexible ultimate. You can't really use it too wrong as long as you're not dying immediately and the fight's happening. So when you're using your ultimate, don't hold on to it. More ultimates means more value. More ultimates you use gets more value. No ultimates means no value. When you are using it, just use it. Usually, you just use your ults. It's not an end all be all, but start of fights is usually best. Mid fights okay. Late fights situational. In between fights is very rare. And therefore, just make sure. Like there was just a couple times where we held on to it. Now let's start to hop into the review and go over the main points for the session. You also had your notes, so this will be recapped in the notes as well. Your abilities. Honestly, not too much that's wrong with the abilities. Venomine, actually, now that I'm mentioning it, I don't think I saw once that you use Venomine.
No.
Yep.
If I don't use abilities often, like
Little
the
girls
G
have no
Swift
place on the
Dash, I
battlefield.
basically just forget they exist.
Yep.
It's a bad habit.
Yep, so I would just make it a habit. It's not a major impactful ability, but it will still do things for you, right? So you can do multiple things with Venomine. Just make sure you're looking to use it. So with Venomine, we can, let's say they have flankers or divey characters, we can place it on top of yourself, which makes them much easier to burn down. I'll show you in a moment, but you can burn down their health like basically like a third or possibly even like a half faster, right? Just because you're getting extra tick damage in there. You can place it, if you're aiming down main, you can place it on a flank, right? So like over here, so you can catch people when they're flanking. So let's see how much damage does this do. Alright, so it does that much damage to their health, which is about 75, no, that's 25, yeah, 75 damage, which is pretty solid. That means that we can burst them down quicker. besides that, place on a flank. Place it, if all else fails and there's nothing else to do with it, just chuck it into the enemy team whenever you get the chance. Kind of in similar timings to when you would be reloading, right? You reload every time you get a lull in time, when you just got the time for it. You don't want to do it when you have people to be shooting at. Don't do it. But when you have a chance, chuck it in there, because if you chuck it in there, then you'll be able to get it on top of somebody. Where'd that go? Oh, that went up there. Then you'll be able to get it on top of somebody. You now can see them through the wall, which makes them easier to headshot,
My
right?
bite is fatal.
So
Okay.
just get it out there doing things. You just pretty much want to be using it off cooldown. Then besides that, grapple, not too much wrong with it. Maybe like once or twice that we didn't use it when Reinhardt was on top of us.
Yeah.
Then overall abilities, kind of like a low to medium priority for you to work on. Visor, make sure you're using it. Besides that, not too many issues. It's not very hard ult to mess up. Low to medium priority for you to work on. Then it comes mechanics. Don't randomly flick if not needed. You kind of have a real jittery aim style when it's not really going to be much of a benefit unless you're actively going up against situations where you need to flick, right? Where, like we said before, fast moving targets, right? So maybe like divey characters or flanky characters, someone sneaking up behind you.
Yeah. I think they did have a tracer on defense when I was playing Widow.
Gotcha. Yeah. So once again, just like adjusting team composition dictates play style. You change it up as you're, with which characters and comps you're up against. For that reason, I'd recommend pressing tab at a minimum once between every single fight. Gives you a lot of info to work on. Did they swap characters? Did we swap characters? What ultimates do we have to work with? Now, besides that, flick when needed. If not, don't flick. Micro flicking is usually okay though, right? And doing more minor ones. That way it's not throwing off your shots. Besides that, cross replacement, aim where you know people are gonna be. Aim at head level, right? That's gonna give you line up a lot more shots for yourself. You said you haven't been playing as much as you'd like. Sorry, this is coming a bit late, but do you typically warm up before you play comp?
No.
No. So I would. So I'll give you really quick advice because we're coming up on the end here. I'd recommend warming up because it gets your aim back into practice. Your aim is the fastest thing that gets rusty with your entire skill set. It'll basically start to deteriorate after a day, and therefore I would recommend the warm up does is it means that you kind of de-rust yourself. And you don't want to have to do that while you're in the middle of a game. So what you do is you can do a high aim intensive game mode for about like 10, maybe 15 minutes, right, or so. It doesn't have to be too long, but you can do like 10 minutes of my modes I'd recommend would be like Triad Free For All, Aim Arena, 1v1 Arena. You can do different aim trainer workshop codes. You can do an actual aim trainer if you wanted to. You can mix it up, do a little bit of everything, which is kind of what I do, a little bit of everything. Do that'll get your aim kind of up and ready to go. Then besides that, I would also recommend play consistently. So you obviously you got stuff, you're busy, you got work, and sometimes work in life comes as the priority. That's how that works. But if you're able to, might recommend just getting in like that 10 minutes a day, because 10 minutes a day can keep you consistent and keep you from getting rusty. So instead of having to go backwards and then forwards and then backwards and then forwards with your aim, you can keep a steady baseline and then slowly get better with it, that sort of thing. So that might be my recommendation as well, is just anytime you're able to, try to fit in like 10 minutes, right? Just to do that warm up, right? That, and then a little bit of target priority, focus on the Widowmaker, right? Make sure you're watching for her. She didn't really seem to be like one of our bigger focuses. She's just kind of there, and then oftentimes she would get the jump on us. So try to get the jump on the Widowmaker instead. Overall, mechanics a little bit higher on the list, maybe like a medium, higher end of a medium, something like that. Then comes your positioning. Make sure you're actually utilizing cover. Good positioning is the usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover. When they have nothing to contest you, take wide open angles. When they do have stuff to contest you, take more flanky angles. Go where they're not expecting you to go. That gives you the jump on them. Then overall, that one's more of like a medium priority. Then finally, we have awareness, and I'll say it's awareness / survivability, because survivability kind of was linked in there, because that was probably the main reason why you were dying, was just a lack of awareness of your surroundings. But note that I wouldn't necessarily focus too much on the survivability. I would probably focus on awareness first, because that will directly impact your survivability, right? So focus on awareness first, and then survivability will kind of follow with it. And then if it's not, then maybe you can go to survivability from there. Awareness, focus on where is your team at, especially where's the enemy team at. That was probably one of the biggest things in awareness, because we wouldn't notice when Reinhardt was on top of us. We wouldn't notice where Widowmaker's at, right? That sort of thing. So pay attention to where is the enemy team located on the map. Watch respawn times. Press tab once in between every fight. Make sure you're just being very, very cognizant over where Widowmaker's at and getting the drop on her, not letting her get the drop on you. Team comp dictates playstyle. Pay attention to team compositions. And all the other, and also audio awareness, right? That was another bigger one, right? So overall, awareness / survivability, that one is probably like the medium high, or maybe lower end medium high, somewhere within that. So to put that all in order, awareness / survivability, number 1. Number 2 is going to be your mechanics. Number 3, positioning. 4, I would say, let's say just your abilities, because hopefully just placing Venom Mine more often is going to be, you know, easier to accomplish, because it's just like reminding yourself to press a button.
Okay.
And then ult usage, number 5. Any questions?
No. I don't know what to say. I feel like I should ask a question, but I don't have a good one.
Don't worry about it. If you get any questions, feel free to message me anytime. I'd be happy to get back to you over those. You know, as long as they're not going to take me like an hour to write up to you.
No, I wouldn't do that.
So let's see. I'm going to stop the